This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good. So let us get started. Welcome everybody, and a thank you to Vivian for catering the lunch today, and good to see everybody here. Nina, I think it's your first time. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me give these out. Baz, you want to take them, Baz? It's a one sheeter. Thanks. And let me send one over to. Good. Okay, so the topic today is the status of Ethiopian Jewry, but it goes beyond that also, because it's fascinating. We have, I think, there are about 14 million Jews uh, in the world as we know it. We have many who are converting or coming to convert, who their grandmother had some strange customs. She used to always light these candles secretly. There are so many more who are coming out of the woodwork. Just out of the seams. You have people in Europe who are mostly, I think mostly Eastern Europe, who on their deathbeds are letting their children, grandchildren know, actually, I'm Jewish, right? There are so many. Now, keep in mind, with all of that, that's 2 out of 12 tribes. 10 tribes were lost, were exiled by Sancheiriv, and went out into exile and have not returned. So there are an incredible amount of people out there who actually have their Jewish lineage. There are many different areas, tribes in Africa and other parts of the world where they identify as Jews. Their practices are not fully aligned with our practices. They've been separated from the general Jewish community for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but they identify as being Jewish. Are they of our people? Are they from the 10 tribes that have maintained? Right? It is very hard to know. So today we're going to be focusing on what's known as the Beta Israel, pronounced Beta Israel, or the Ethiopian Jews, which today form a large group in Israel. So let's get a little background, and then we'll see the halachic implications that we had as we moved forward with that. Okay, so the Beta Israel, they are, Linda, I'm just going to mute you, otherwise there's a little bit of bounce back. I took care of it, don't worry. Just don't be, not to be insulted. Okay, so it's an African community of the Jewish diaspora. After the founding of the state of Israel in 1948, most immigrated to Israel or were evacuated from Africa through several initiatives by the Israeli government. And when I mentioned today's topic at Minyan this morning, so one of the men came over to me and shared that he was part, when he did his Israeli army service, he was part of the unit, said that there was a Netflix movie about this, about the Red Sea Resort, which was actually an undercover Israeli army Mossad that set up shop there in Africa as I think it was like this snorkeling place, but actually it was a way through which that they were able to get these Ethiopian Jews from Israel, from there, to get them to Israel. And he wasn't part of the group that actually landed there, but he said that the planes were landing in these completely dark fields, and the Ethiopians started running for their lives. They'd never seen airplanes before, and it was quite frightening to them. He said it was quite an experience. Historically, they lived in northern and northwestern Ethiopia, spread out across more than 500 small villages amongst mostly Christian and Muslim populations. They had been for probably about well over 1,000 years isolated from the more mainstream Jewish communities. They practiced a non-Talmudic form of Judaism, similar in some respects to the Karaites. With much persecution in Ethiopia, a significant portion of them were forced into Christianity in the 19th and 20th centuries, and they became known as the Falash Mura. They made extensive contact with other Jewish communities in the late 20th century, after which there was a great debate over their Jewishness, right? And after halachic constitutional discussions, the government began a large-scale effort to conduct transport operations and bring them to Israel in multiple waves: Operation Brothers, Operation Moses, Operation Joshua, and Operation Solomon in 1991. By the end of 2008, there were 119,000 Jews from Ethiopia and Israel, about 81,000 born in Ethiopia, and about 38,000 born in Israel. Today, Israel is home to the largest Beth Israel community in the world, with about 168,000 citizens of Ethiopian descent. That was in 1922, mostly in southern and central Israel. Okay, so that's a little bit of the historical aspect and perspective. How do we view the Judaism, the Jewish status of the Ethiopian Jews? So Rav Avadi Yosef claimed that they are definitely, undoubtedly, of Jewish origin, and halachically they don't need to undergo conversion upon their arrival in Israel. Most authorities give them a status that is questionable, and therefore urged that they do convert, as they did when they arrived in Israel. This was Chief Rabbis Yitzchak Herzig, Yitzchak Nisim, Shlomo Gorin, and Rav Moshe Feinstein. They did do that wisely. Instead of, one can imagine that there might have been those who would have said, "Oh, you show them, you stand on your principle," right? And by doing that, it would have really, really split their community and really altered their acceptance into the wider Israeli society. So it always makes sense in those situations not to dig in your heels and, "Oh, who are you to tell," right? And just do something, take the steps to keep ourselves united. The question then was more in regard to what we call the Falash Mura. Thank you, Ashley. Those who had abandoned their Judaism and taken on a different religion, right? What was their status, right? If one abandons their Judaism, are they still considered to be Jewish or not? So that is source number one. We have the Gemara in Yevamot, which talks about conversion. Let's go through parts of that. We have it both in Hebrew and English. Tana Rabbanan ger sheba l'kayer b'zman hazeh. A person comes to convert. In this time, we say to him, "Ma ra'ita shebat l'kayer." Right? What are you thinking? What did you see? What made you decide that you want to convert? Do you not know that Israel this time, that we are anguished, suppressed, despised, harassed, intimidated, and difficulty comes upon us. If he says, Yodea ani, I know, ve'eni kadai, and I don't know if I'm even worthy to be part of the Jewish people, mikablin oto miyad, then we will accept that person. Umodian oto miktzat mitzvot kalot, miktzat mitzvot chamorot. We let the person know some of the lenient mitzvot, some of the stringent mitzvot. Umodian oto, we let them know the sin of neglecting to give avon leket shicho peya meiser ani, all of those that we distribute to those who are in need. Umodian otam onashan shal mitzvah. We let them know the severity of the mitzvot. Kibel, the person accepts that. Malin otom miyad. This is Yevamos 47b. The person accepts that. I'm sorry, online, let me move this along. Kibel malin otom miyad. Then the person if a male gets circumcised, Ushnei Talmidei Chachamim will soon adjust that. But right now it says, and there are two Talmidei Chachamim, two scholars, Torah scholars, two Rabbanim, who stand by there, Umodin Oto, and let him know some of the mitzvot, Kalot, mitzvot Chamurot, again, some of the mitzvot, Taval, immerses, Va'ala, and he comes out. So the person, the male, had circumcision, had immersion in the mikvah, Harehu ki Yisroel l'chol dvarav. He is a bona fide Israelite in every sense, in regard to every aspect. Isha, if it's a woman, woman will have her be in the water up until her neck. Two Talmidei Chachamim stand on the outside. Let her know again the mitzvot, chamurot. She immerses and she is good to go. The Gemara asks, Ushnei Talmidei Chachamim? Is it two who stand there? Didn't Rabbi Chia say to Rabbi Yochanan, a ger, a convert, needs shlosha? Rabbi Yochanan says, actually, the text should read not two, but tani shlosha, right? It should, in fact, be three. Taval va'ala, the person immersed and came out, he is a Yisroel l'chol divarav, in all aspects. Now, if the Breita said in all aspects, it must be coming to teach us something that I might otherwise have not known or understood. The Gemara asks, L'mai hilchata? What is this halacha said in regard to? The ihadarbe. If the person reverts back to their old religion or to their non-religion, the person steps back from their Judaism, rejects their Judaism, Umekadesh bat Yisrael, and goes ahead and marries a Jewish girl, Yisrael Meshumad Karina Bey. This person is considered to be an Israelite who is rejecting his Judaism. He doesn't revert back to being a non-Jew. It is a Jewish person who is Meshumad, who is rejecting his Judaism, the Kiddushav Kiddushin. And his marriage is considered to be a valid marriage. So if a person was Jewish, as the Falash Mura were, and then rejected that, they remain Jewish. You can't convert out from Judaism. You might call yourself X or Y, you might believe X or Y, but a person who is born Jewish or who converts to Judaism is Jewish, period. End of story. Oh.
A lot of people are Jewish that don't know they're Jewish.
Okay. Yeah. However, the Gemara also in Yevamot 17b seems to say otherwise. The Gemara there says, we have in the bottom of the first side of the notes that we have here, Rav Yehuda Ravasi, Goy Shekirish Bisman Hazeh, if a non-Jew marries a woman, a Jewish woman nowadays, Chosheshin L'Kiddushin, we need to be concerned. Maybe it's a good marriage. Why is that? Shema Me'aseret HaShvatim Hu. Maybe he is one of the 10 tribes. So he thinks he's not Jewish. Everyone thinks he's not Jewish, but in fact, he might be Jewish. The Gemara asks, but wait, v'hakol de parish miruba parish. We have a general rule that we go with the majority. This person was part of the world at large. He left that group and married this Jewish girl. Well, majority of the world are not the 10 tribes. Therefore, our assumption must be that he's not from the 10 tribes. Why is there a concern? Just parenthetically, we apply this concept when a person comes to convert, because there are certain nations where the Torah limits their ability to convert and marry into kahal and marry a regular Jewish girl or Jewish man. Right? And if you're Mitzri, Egyptian, or Edomi, it's 3 generations. Ammon and Moab, it's males forever. Females are okay right away. Ruth, that was a whole controversy that took place about Ruth. So when someone converts, why are we not concerned that they might be from one of these nations? Well, even if they are Egyptian, the nations have all been mixed around enough that we don't know who is who. The fact that you're living in present-day Egypt, what we would call Edom or Moab, is irrelevant towards the person's actual nationality. But why are we concerned that anyone who comes to convert put a hold on 3 generations of marriage, let's say, because maybe they're from those that we have these delays until they can marry into regular kahal. Until then, they can only marry other converts. We don't say that at all. Why not? Because of this concept. Called the Ruba, called the Parish, Miruba Kaparish. Anyone who leaves, they leave the majority. There are 70 nations. There are, let's say, 5 where there are restrictions. 5 out of 70 is the miyut. The vast majority don't have restrictions. And therefore, anyone who comes to convert, the assumption is they're not from those which have restrictions, and therefore they can marry right away. There are no concerns. Back to the Gemara over here in Yevamah 17a. So why is it that a guy, a non-Jew who marries a Jewish woman, why does he say that maybe he's from the 10 tribes? Why don't we go with the majority? So the Gemara says, we turn over to the second side. B'duchta de kavi'i. Rabbi Yehuda only made this statement in a place where the 10 tribes were known to have been living, right? And we have the pasuk over there which says Vayanchem, that he led them, and they lived this during the exile, and they were to Chalach, Chavor, Nahar Gozan, Arim Madai, right? All these different places. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda's concern that they might be of Jewish origin is only in those places. However, Igad Amri, there are those that say, Ki Amrita Kamei de Shmuel, when this concern was said over in front of Shmuel, Amar Li, he said, Lo Zaz Misham. They did not leave there, this discussion, Ad Sha'asa'um Goyim Gemurim. Those descendants of the 10 tribes, no concern whatsoever. They are Goyim Gemurim. They're absolutely non-Jewish. Absolutely non-Jewish. That's going to be a problem. As it says by Shem Bagadu, Kibanim Zorim Yaladu. They rebelled against God, and they gave birth to foreign children. Their children are not Jewish. So this Gemara seems to say that if you were Jewish but you left your Judaism, then you lose your Judaism. So how do we resolve these 2 Gemaras? So the approach of most of the Rishonim is that this was a unique status of the 10 tribes because they had their total assimilation over many, many generations. But it will not apply to an individual who converted and then reverted back away from Judaism. And the halacha in Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, follows along with that. Let's see these halachot in Shulchan Aruch. Again, on the sheet, both in Hebrew and in English. Kashevo ger likayer. When a potential convert, comes to convert, both Rav, we check. Shema Viglo Mammon, are they doing it for monetary gain, or Bishvil Shirara, Sheyizkele, or because of some power or position that will be gained, or Mibnei HaPachad, or is it out of some sort of fear? Bali Kanes Ladad, is that why the person is coming? Im Ishu Bokin Acharav Shema Einav Natan Isha Yudit. If it's a male, is he interested in a Jewish girl? Im Isha, if it's a female, Bokin Acharav Shema Einav B'Bachar Yisroel, is she interested in a Jewish man? Bim Lonin Seit Lahem Ila. If we don't find such a cause, if we don't find that is the cause of their motivation, Modi'in lahem, we let them know, Kovid ol Torah, that it's a serious responsibility to accept the Torah. The Torah, it's not so easy necessarily to always do it. And that way, they will step back. Im kiblu, if they accepted and did not step back. Otam, we see shechozu me'ava, that they come to Judaism out of love. Mekablan otam, we will then accept them and put them through the process of conversion. If they were not investigated, or they were not told of the schar mitzvot, of the reward of mitzvot and the repercussions, and nevertheless umal v'taval, and the person circumcised and immersed in front of three people, even if they are hedyotot, even if they are just regular people, harei ger, that person is converted. Afilu know the sheshvil davar hu mitgayer, right? Even if we find out there really was some ulterior motive, hoyel v'mal v'taval v'yatza, since the person, male, circumcised and immersed, female, immersed, yatza michlal ha'ovdei kochavim, that person is no longer within the category of non-Jewish. V'choshen lachin paretzik asov afilu chazar v'avan v'afilu chazar v'avan elilim. Either the person reverted back to idolatry. Harehu ki Yisroel mumar. This person is a Jew who has gone astray. The kidushav kidushin. His marriage is a valid marriage. So we see that lahalacha, we go with the Gemara in Yevamos 47, not what it said about the 10 tribes back on Yevamah 17, and therefore the 10 tribes, that is a separate, unique situation, and therefore that is why they became non-Jews, but otherwise a person becomes, once a Jew, a person is a Jew. So based on this, when we look at the Falash Mura, even though they converted to Christianity, let's say about 100 years ago, they remained socially distinct. Not religiously distinct, but they remained socially distinct within the general Ethiopian community. Non-Jews refer to them as Israel, and they are known to have Jewish roots, right? And many non-Jewish society views them as strange, lower stature, and would not marry them. In fact, the intermarriage rate amongst the Falash Mura was very low, 0.3, not 3, not 30, 0.3%. That's 3 out of 1,000, not 3 out of 100. Actuary?
True.
Okay. Right? And the few intermarriages that took place were far away from their ancestral villages. Right? And therefore it would seem that their having lived as Christians would not detract from their status as Jews. So we have the Ethiopian Jews who we viewed as being Jewish, and the Falash Mura who were Jewish and converted The general approach is they do not lose their Judaism because of that. However, that actually can then cause other problems that we wouldn't otherwise have. Yes, Ken?
What about all the Ethiopians who are demanding that the Israeli government bring their relatives, not Jewish, converted to Christianity, among whom have always been Christian?
So that is a political question, right? That's not a halachic question. Meaning their relatives who were not Jewish, were not falashmura, full Christians, right? So that's not a halachic question. They are not Jewish.
Because I'm asking it in the sense that you're pointing out that 0.3% of them intermarry, but they have clearly relatives who did not intermarry, who have always been Christian throughout their lives, and many throughout their generations. So the question that I have is, where does this 0.3% come from?
So you're asking if, right? If what you're saying is correct, that many are asking for Christian relatives. How do they have Christian relatives?
You go to Israel, then you see them with tattoos of crosses on their foreheads.
Well, that's not an issue. Meaning the falashmura, right? If that was
taken a position of Christianity.
I'm sorry?
They've taken a position of Christianity, so much so that they actually proudly wear the tattoos.
So then we're back to Jews. If we're establishing that they're Jewish, we're back to Jews who have gone off from their Judaism. Tragic, but I think it's not something that is so shocking to us, right? That does happen in the world. Yes, Dov. Yes, Dov.
There's somebody that we know who's like very gifted who can look at a person and go, absolutely Jewish.
No one that I know, Dov. Okay. So now another question then comes up. Well, two other questions. First of all, when such a person who has left Judaism, when they come back, is there any reconverting process that they need to go through? So once again, if you look back at the Shulchan Aruch that we saw, so the Ramah says, that's on the bottom of the one of 268:12, an apostate Israelite that repents does not need to immerse. However, he does say, Rak midrabanan, rabbinically, yeshlo litvo. The person should immerse and accept that that the person is rejoining the nation. That's the rabbinic, and he brought an interesting anecdotal story over here. An older woman had converted to Catholicism in her youth, returned to Judaism in later years. She asked a certain rabbi if she must immerse in a mikveh. She said it's difficult to immerse due to her age. The question was posed to Rav Lichtenstein Zatzal, who ruled that the woman should make a great effort to immerse despite the difficulty. He explained that, quote, it is the least that she can do in light of her earlier abandonment of Judaism. But it's not an obligation. One more Shulchan Aruch that we have over here. Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer 44:9. Yisroel Mumar, a Jewish apostate. Shekidesh, who married a woman. Kiddushav Kiddushin. The marriage is a good marriage. Kiddushin Gemurin. Utzricha Mimenu get. And she will need a get from him if they're going to be terminating that marriage. Even children that were born after this person has given up his Judaism, if he marries, if the son of that person marries a Jewish girl, kiddushav kiddushin, then the marriage is a marriage. The davka shalim Yisrael afilu mumeret, aval im hulidu min akutit dino kakuti afilu okay she'enu mumar. Okay, So even the children will have this din. So again, by the Fala Shmura, even the children will still have that din of being Jewish. However, as we said before, but then we do run into another issue. If they're Jewish, then we're concerned about mamzerut. Mamzer is a person who was born from a married woman and another man besides her husband. That is the only thing that will create a mamzer. A child born out of wedlock is not a mamzer. A married man, has an affair with a non-married woman, the child is not a mamzer. Because according to the din of the Torah, don't try this at home, but a man can have more than one wife. But a woman cannot have more than one husband. So mamzer is only if a married woman has relations with another man and a child is born from that union, that child is a mamzer. So now a problem has just come up. Once we're saying that they are Jewish, so then there's the major concern if whatever divorce proceedings they have, if those are not halachic divorce proceedings, so then when they get divorced and marry someone else, the concern is they're not divorced, they're still married to the first person, and then children born from this marriage will be considered mamzerim. So if we have this situation where they're not observing halacha, the assumption is that their divorces were not proper divorces. So putting aside the problem of them being Jewish or not, there is a major hurdle that we have over here of mamzerus. Yes, David.
I don't understand why that's a problem. If they're not observant to the point where they're not getting the proper divorces, then they didn't have a proper marriage in the first place.
Good. So one approach that's taken to remove this hurdle is what Ravad Yosef, right? The marriages were also halachically invalid, and therefore it's not that they were married and weren't halachically divorced; they weren't halachically married and they weren't halachically divorced. Therefore, all of the children were born, so to speak, from halachic view, out of wedlock. Okay, that does not create any status that is problematic if they were born out of wedlock. Now, this actually is the ruling of Rav Moshe Feinstein that comes up today. I had this situation that I was asked to perform the wedding of a very, very fine, frum young man, and his mother had been married, got divorced, and then married this person's father. They were not at all observant, and then, right, this boy became a Baal Teshuvah, became very fully observant, and now he wants to get married, wants me to do the marriage, and his mother never got a divorce from her first marriage. Never got a get. Never had a proper divorce. Yes, a proper get. Thank you, Esther. From that first marriage, which could be problematic. Now, there are those opinions. Rabbi Yisroel Belsky, who was a major halachic power in the 20th century in New York, he felt that if a man and woman were living together as husband and wife, even if they did not have a halachic marriage, living together as husband and wife gives them the status of married and therefore would need a proper get. And such a ruling, such approach wreaks havoc on all of these situations of Balei Teshuva. Rav Moshe Feinstein, he ruled that no, as long as there were not kosher witnesses at the wedding, at the first wedding, meaning two Shomer Shabbos men above 13 who witnessed the wedding, then it is not a halachically valid marriage. It would not necessitate a divorce, and therefore this child that we're talking about now is perfectly fine, no issue of mamzerus. As I called Rav David Cohen to ask him what to do in this situation, and he said, call Rav David Feinstein. In other words, he leans towards Rav Belsky personally, but did not want to impose that on me and on this young man, right? Which would basically ruin his life. So he said, call Rav David Feinstein. That's Rav Moshe Feinstein's son, who followed his father's ruling, which I did. And he said, well, make sure there were no witnesses. I spoke to this young man who spoke to his mother. They didn't know anyone who was Shomer Shabbos. Forget about have two witnesses there at the wedding, right? And therefore, Mazel Tov, we went ahead with a beautiful, beautiful wedding. So that is Rav Avadi Yosef's, that is Rav Moshe Feinstein, that is David Room's approach to taking care of this mamzerus issue. There is no mamzerus issue over here because, like we said, there was no marriage, there was no divorce. Others have another reason through which to allow it, and that is Rav Herzig, Rav Yisroeli, and Rav Herschel Schachter from Yeshiva University. And they apply what's called a sfeika, a doubt, a double doubt, a doubt upon a doubt. Okay. First they said there was so much intermarriage, right? Different than what they had said over there, coupled with improper conversion ceremonies. And therefore, they said many Ethiopian Jews are descendants of non-Jews. So suffix number one, is this person really Jewish or not? And now number two, even if they are Jewish, right? And furthermore, some say maybe they're not from the 10 tribes. Maybe they all started with some clans that converted improperly. And therefore they were never Jewish. Even if they are Jews, so then any one individual has a suffix. Are they a descendant, a product of a married, right, of a second marriage, whatever it might be? So with this sfeika, therefore it would not be a concern. Therefore, the approach of the Israeli, I'd say the government was to accept them as Jews. That's more political in terms of a right of return law, and in terms of halacha. So they were viewed, the general Ethiopians were viewed as Jews. And there are many stories, many heartbreaking stories. They came to Israel, and the kids went to school, and they came home, told the parents what they were learning, and the parents came storming to the school, furious. You taught my children that the temple was destroyed. And they said, yeah, of course, the temple was destroyed. What are you talking about? The temple was destroyed. And once that sunk in, they tore their garments. They sat on the floor. Right? If they were part of the 10 tribes, they were exiled, I believe it was 11 years before the temple was destroyed. and the exile of the kingdom of Judah, which are the tribes of Benjamin and Yehuda, and the Cohen and Levim who were amongst them. So they were not aware. Keep in mind, they were not keeping up with social media, right? To say the least, right? We're talking about the 1970s, 80s, 90s, where there wasn't such a thing. And they were in these remote villages where I think it's safe to say the Wi-Fi was pretty spotty. Okay, I think that's a safe assumption to make. Okay, so they were not at all up with all that was going on, right? So once again, so from a halachic point of view, even though there were those that said that they would not need conversion, right, in order to cover all bases and make sure that they could fully integrate into full Israeli society, they did undergo a conversion. It's called a conversion misafek, right? If there is a need, then we will do that. I had another young man here. I write a book about this. Another young man here, right, who also came from a parent who had converted and then had reverted somewhat back to her past, and his Rebbe elsewhere had suggested, and also I did that marriage, had suggested that just do a conversion misafek. So me and two other guys and this fellow went to the beach one early morning, and he waded out there wearing a loose-fitting bathing suit. And at some point, he far out there, all of a sudden he held up the bathing suit, and then he went under the water, came out, put the bathing suit back on, came back out of the water, and we took care of that. We took care of that question. Interesting job I have, huh? Yeah. So so in certain situations, and I've also had a number of people who approach me and they're sure that they're Jewish because of this, that. And I said to them, wonderful, but why get yourself involved in questions? Why don't we just go ahead and do a gerus misafek, and that way you'll be fully across the board, able to integrate. So the question of mamzerus was taken care of either by the approach, there was no kedushin, there was no marriage, therefore there was no need for a divorce, and therefore any second marriage would not lead to a mamzer, or the sveka component. And in terms of their Judaism, they were Jewish. So you want to say, some say maybe they weren't Jewish. They did a gerus misafek, and now they are a full active part of Israeli society. Like I said, numbering well over 100,000 members of that Ethiopian descent community. I don't want to say community because they're not a distinct community. They're part of Israeli society, and that's where we are at today. Yes, Reb Shlomo.
Are the Ethiopians black-skinned?
Yes.
Does that set them apart in any way?
In Israeli society?
Yeah.
Israeli society has lots of hues and colors to them, right? And you have many Sephardic. You have some Teimani, right, who are very dark, right? Yeah. So that actually, often for an African American convert, Israeli society is a little bit easier than most of our lily white Jewish American communities. Yes, Esther.
So if they're from one of the 10 lost tribes, is there any, which tribe or which tribes? Do we know, or is there any?
I don't think, look, we also don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Are we from Judah? Are we from Benjamin? Are we from But we know we're from Levi. If we're a Kohen or a Levi, then, right, Dr. Ray, you know which tribe you're from. You're a Levi, right? So you know you're from the tribe of Levi. I'm not a Levi or a Kohen, so I'm probably either Yehuda or Binyamin, because that is what comprised the kingdom of Judah, which was exiled afterwards into Babylon and then returned to Israel, right? So that's who we are for the most part. Now we might also be, maybe there were some, I don't know, maybe there were some other tribes who had married women from Judah or Benjamin and lived in the kingdom of Judah, or whatever reason, or didn't marry a woman from, right? It doesn't make a difference. Tribe goes by the father. So there certainly could have been, I'm sure there were, members of other tribes who had migrated at some point and lived in the kingdom of Judah, right? So maybe we're descendants of them. So we really have no idea which tribe we are from, even those who know they're Jewish. Someone come from the 10 tribes, I think also certainly would not know which of those 10. Mashiach will tell, maybe. I don't know how pertinent it is, maybe he will, right? Maybe he will. One thing we know the Mashiach won't tell is if there are actual mamzerim, because no one knows if there was any indiscretion that might have happened, some impropriety amongst any of our earlier generations, right? We have no way of knowing. So anyone who might have such status, who is unknown to them and has just melted in and become a regular part of Israel, there, Eliyahu is not going to say, hey, you, problem, right? They will not be identified once they become part of Klal Yisrael. They will not be, right? So we know Mashiach won't point any of that out. Will they point out which tribe we're from? I don't know. I hope to find out. Soon. We need it. Yes, Mr. Ken.
Okay, 2 questions. The whole definition or procedure for identifying a mamzer. How certain is that? I mean, how was it derived? Because I look at the word, me'amzer.
It's not me'am. There's no ayin there. It's mam. It's a mum-zar. It's a strange blemish. It's not me'am. There's no ayin there. It's not me'am. It's not from a nation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could it be construed by some changing of the letter?
I don't know why we changed the letter to come up with a false meaning.
Okay. There's a second question.
Though I will say, while you're thinking about the second question, we go to all lengths to not declare someone a mamzer. He's nowadays, hey, DNA testing. Well, is DNA testing 100%? No. 99 point whatever it might be, right? So even DNA testing, I believe we will not use. That would be an interesting lunch and learn to look at, right? Even DNA testing, I don't believe we will use that to say, this person is a mamzer. Let's say the husband's been incarcerated with no weekend furloughs, right? And then and the wife becomes pregnant, right? And it's been 11 months. Well, maybe it's a very, very long. We go to all lengths to say, yes, to have that doubt, to rescue. Yes, Nina.
Throughout the years, there have been pogroms. So what if a woman was married?
Excellent. Yeah.
And
Right. And was
so that child
right?
would be a mamzer?
That child would be a mamzer.
If 7 generations?
I'm sorry?
7 generations?
No, that's
10.
forever. That's forever.
But that's,
Yeah.
would just be a mamzer even though the woman was raped?
So certainly, right, it's no fault. It's never any fault of the child. It's never any fault of the child. But the same way
But this
that
isn't the fault of the mother.
either, yes, but it's not a matter of fault. It's a matter of, let's say the mother was a drug addict, right? So we have children who were born from mothers who are drug addicts, who for the rest of their life, they have this stunted mental ability, cognitive ability because of the drugs. But, so that is a physical reality, right? Mamzerut is a spiritual reality. Okay, there is a reality to the spiritual. Now, that doesn't mean the person is not a Jew. Person comes, the person could be a Talmid Chacham, a tremendous Torah sage, and the person would get an aliyah in front of a Kohen who was an ignorant Kohen. But mamzer would mean in terms of who that person can marry, it is very, very limited who that person can marry. But it doesn't mean the person becomes a non-Jew. But in terms of who that person could be a tremendous Talmud, a tremendous Torah sage. But there are restrictions in terms of who that person would be allowed to marry. But that would be tragic. And yeah, look, that's part of the great debate today about abortion, right? In cases where it was a rape, where it was incest, which led to that pregnancy, right? There's right. Even today we have the reverberations of that question. Yes, David.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So they can marry.
Sorry?
They can marry.
They can marry another mamzer. They can marry a convert, but the children will also be mamzerim. Yeah. So it's not simple. It's not simple. Right? There is an opinion that says that there is a way that they can be metaher, they can purify their children, right? And that is if they'll marry, right? The question is if they marry someone who is non-Jewish, right? So then the child is not Jewish, is that right? Will that then, and then the child converts, right? So that is right. That is an approach that one of the sages of the Mishnah has. I don't think that's adopted lahalacha. Yeah. Yes, Dov.
I'm not sure that this, but I've heard that sometimes Hashem might sort of lure to cover up the killing of a mom.
Could be. Yes, Ken.
I'm frequently confronted with this. There seem to be all these procedures and techniques to basically circumvent a lot of what Torah prescribes. I mean, on the side of accepting everyone into a community that Hashem clearly, through many ways in Torah, decided needed to be separate. So I am concerned.
Yes, but there is a Torah concept. Going back to what we said before, 5 out of the 70 nations have certain proscriptions upon their entering the Kal. Not that they can't convert. Once again, not they can't convert, only who they can marry, right? But one of the Torah principles, also given to us by God, is called the Parish Meruba Kaparish, that we follow, that it goes after the majority. So yes, we will. The rabbis will use existing Torah laws to try to alleviate situations that are troubling. But it's incorrect to say that God did not want them to be part of the nation. They can convert and become Jewish. The only prescription is on who they can marry once they convert. So it's not that, because of this we're taking in people that God said don't take them in.
Rabbi,
Yes, Janet.
if it's a female, are all the statuses the same? I mean, in forbidden relationships, the baby girl is still a mother.
Again, ask. I'm sorry, Janet.
I said, if it's a Is the female of some of those forbidden relationships still a mamzer? Like a baby girl?
A girl can be a mamzer. A mamzer results from a forbidden relationship for which there would be either a karet, a spiritual cutting off, or a capital punishment, right, at the time that there was a beit din, and then that
Yeah,
would apply both to any child born from there. When it
because
comes
so far,
to someone from one of these nations converting who wasn't supposed to marry into kahal, that would not create a mamzer because that's a lav, that's a don't. The same way that if a Kohen marries someone he's not supposed to marry, the child will not be a Kohen. However, the child will also not be a mamzer.
thank you.
Okay, we'll call it over here, my friends. Shkoach, everybody. Thank you for joining. Yes.